In the early part of the 20th century, racial segregation was still in place in many parts of America. Black independent cinema surfaced around this time, and was a place where black audiences could escape the white Hollywood mainstream images used against them. A significant director to emerge into the film industry was Oscar Micheaux. He is celebrated for the success that came from his work when it was accepted by black audiences, especially regarding the 1920 release of Within Our Gates. This was a clear response to D.W. Griffith's The Birth of a Nation. The remarkable thing about both films is how we can identify the clear contrast in the production values, stereotypes, and the director's intentions for their films. These distinctions can stem from both directors being in different positions on what they had access to in order to create their films. The opposing racial hierarchies played a part in the obvious quality difference between their films, as the look of black independent cinema was no match for Hollywood. Looking at black history, we are able to identify bogus stereotypes and how The Birth of a Nation enforces them for white entertainment and to encourage white supremacy, whereas Within Our Gates provides countertypes to these that challenge white supremacism and illustrates an accurate image of African Americans. For example, in The Birth of a Nation, D.W. Griffiths shows characters that reflect the mammy, the Uncle Tom, the brutal black buck, the coon, and the mulatto. He does this in support of segregation and directly renders African Americans as inferior human beings. Presenting blacks negatively was vital to his narrative, as their characteristics then justify the Ku Klux Klan's actions. Ultimately, The Birth of a Nation was so revolutionary that it encouraged the revival of the KKK after they had previously disbanded in 1869. Here, we can see the similarity between the two advertisements is self-evident, and the KKK using The Birth of a Nation as a platform for their revitalization. In early 1865, it was an incredible point in history for African Americans, as they got the right to vote and had real political power in the Reconstruction years after the Civil War. Therefore, The Birth of a Nation helped break up the equality created in the Reconstruction era. However, Oscar Micheaux decided to make a stand for African Americans, and present them accurately in films touching on controversial racial themes. Within Our Gates challenges white supremacism by correcting blacks' history, with a narrative that was strong enough to make an impact on the racial issues in America and overcome the poor production values that he had no control over. This empowered black audiences, who were now able to engage with the characters devised, which is a big benefit in terms of the authenticity, as The Birth of a Nation did not allow black audiences to identify with the characters. Additionally, Within Our Gates explores the social injustices surrounding sexual violence that black women suffered. Instead of presenting black men as the brutal buck, an over-sexualized, aggressive, and animalistic predator to the defenseless white women, Micheaux educates the cinemas of the 1920s on the shocking truths to black history. In the times of these films, there was a generation still alive that could hand down this history, to explain that through the last parts of slavery, it was white aggression and white sexual violence that was the problem. Therefore, because it is such a stark film, the history is authentic, and this means the audience's experience becomes more authentic. Lydia, in The Birth of a Nation, is a famous mixed-race character and defined as the mulatto. Sylvia Landry's skin tone is exactly the same as Lydia's. The Lydia portrayal in The Birth of a Nation is that her African-American side has made her a sexual being and does not know boundaries, as at the start of the film it implies that she is having a relationship with Austin Stoneman, the northern politician. Micheaux contrasts this as Sylvia is a dignified, educated, young black woman, which is a complete rebuttal and attack on the portrayal of Lydia. He also makes a point for black audiences by finally showing them as dignified people through the Landry family. They were devised to tackle the terrible stereotypes in The Birth of a Nation, and their characters were not made for white entertainment. Ultimately, this makes their fate in the film that much harder to watch. Micheaux achieved an authentic voice for African Americans as they could finally identify with the black family. This conflict in history is one of many statements made in black independent cinema that revolutionized the 1920s but is now easily overlooked. The work of Oscar Micheaux deserves to be recognized in streamlined education, as he overcame many challenges that classes work today as heroic.